2020 was a very interesting year in the mid-range for smartphones. One of the devices that stood out in the second half of 2020 was the POCO X3 NFC. And this is the Tech Travel Geeks long-term review of the POCO X3 NFC. If you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. Right then, so for under £200 or under 250 US dollars, often you can have quite a selection of devices, but few of them deliver as much value for money as the POCO X3 NFC. Whether that's in the camera department, in the battery life department, or more crucially in the average performance of the device, the POCO X3 NFC pretty much kills all other devices in that price category. This is partly because you get a very nice big screen, you get a very capable chipset in the Qualcomm Snapdragon 732G, that's a new 8nm chipset, as well as plenty of storage built in, which is expandable with microSD as well. Now, the POCO X3 NFC is from POCO, a challenger brand spun out of or generated by Xiaomi. That's really good because not only do you get a lot of Xiaomi's industrial know-how, but also the software, such as the Android distribution running on the POCO X3 NFC. Now that is Android 10 based MIUI 12. It differs a little from what we've seen from Xiaomi Actual. The default launcher, for example, has an app drawer, so it's much more Google experience-like, but it performs really, really well. Just as we saw on other Xiaomi devices in 2020 and we're about to finish reviews of in 2021, MIUI 12 offers a consistent experience, lots of extras, and in some cases some ads, which are really not much of an issue. You can turn them off, and we'll probably do a video on how to switch off ads on Xiaomi devices going forward. But honestly, when you're getting a device in this price range, it's not surprising to see the manufacturer, in this case POCO, and its parent company Xiaomi, trying to monetize through advertising and make some of that money they're maybe leaving on the table by selling you the device at under £200 back. But rest assured that value for money, you won't be disappointed with the POCO X3 NFC. That Snapdragon chipset gives you a smooth sailing experience throughout the user interface and most apps that you'd be running. I only ran into very few slowdowns in some very, very demanding games where I made a point of upping the screen resolution and frame rate, such as Call of Duty Mobile. But apart from that, I've really had no issues with it, and it can really happily handle lots of multitasking as well as streaming over Bluetooth whilst downloading stuff in the background. So it's very capable, and I was very, very pleased with that. Now, at the bottom of the device, you have a USB Type-C connector. That's for charging. And the POCO X3 NFC comes with a high-quality, high-speed charger in the box, one of Xiaomi's new 33-watt orange USB Type-C cables. That should be enough to charge your phone from completely flat to full in just over an hour, and to 50% in less than half an hour. It really is very, very impressive. But in most cases, you probably won't need to use that fast charging, because the 5100 mAh battery in the POCO X3 NFC, paired with MIUI's optimizations and that very efficient Snapdragon 732G chipset, gives you overall excellent battery life, even when doing some heavy streaming or gaming and making lots of phone calls. I was really impressed by the overall battery life in the POCO X3 NFC. And since I mentioned gaming and streaming, one of the really good things is that not only do you have the option to use Bluetooth to connect to good sets of headphones or speakers, the POCO X3 NFC has a Courage port. Yes, it has a 3.5mm audio jack, so it's always good to see those on modern smartphones, just as we're really happy to see that it has an infrared blaster. Yes, you can use the POCO X3 NFC to remote control your TVs, air conditioning units, or whatever other infrared devices you have around. Ergonomically, the POCO X3 NFC is a chunky device. It's like the slightly heavier built brother or sister of the Redmi Note 9S that we reviewed earlier in 2020. It shares a lot of the industrial design, such as the side-mounted fingerprint scanner, the overall construction, and that LCD screen with a notch in the top of it. That industrial design is not a coincidence. It's very similar to what we then saw also on the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro 5G. It's a tried and tested platform. It doesn't try and sully the screen with a bit of curves on the edges. It just works really well. And the screen itself, with a high refresh rate of 120 Hz, is really pleasant to use. Color saturation is good. The resolution is full high definition plus, so great for when you're streaming video on Netflix, Amazon Prime, the BBC iPlayer, or YouTube. By the way, if you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks on YouTube. So, the screen and industrial design are great, but one thing is to be said, it doesn't feel as premium as the Redmi Note 9S. That's because the back and the chassis of the POCO X3 NFC are plastic. And there's nothing wrong with that. It makes the device slightly lighter and also affords some slightly better heat dissipation in case you are trying to run this device at maximum capacity. But in day-to-day use, it is very pleasant. And there are plenty of case options for the POCO X3 NFC. We've unboxed and reviewed a few here on the Tech Travel Geeks YouTube channel. Please do check those out as well if you're considering buying this shiny device and wanting to protect that polycarbonate back with a bit of Mocadile, or if you're living a bit dangerously, some glass. So, the POCO X3 NFC is a great all-round smartphone. One of the key features that the POCO X3 NFC has in that price category is an excellent camera setup, at least as far as the main sensor is concerned. The main sensor is a 64 megapixel one, which outputs by default 16 megapixel images. A lot of pixel bidding going on there with computational photography gives you a very pleasant overall photographic experience, which is very good for that sub £200 price range. It really is impressive. Now there is also a 13 megapixel ultra-wide camera, which is great in good lighting conditions, but suffers a bit in low light. And even in good lighting conditions, the colours are a little washed out. But apart from that, really good 13 megapixel secondary sensor. There's also a fixed focus 2 megapixel macro camera, which, as our friend Miriam says, is pretty much a sticker camera. It's just there to make the specs look good. And there's also a 2 megapixel depth sensor, which in portrait photography is maybe used, maybe not. We'll never really know because it's behind MIUI's camera setup. And that camera setup gives you a lot of extras, such as options for time lapses and optimizing your pictures. It's a great thing to play around with, but if you just use it as a point and shoot camera using the main sensor or the ultra wide one, you won't be disappointed. Even in low light, it does a pretty good job. There is also MIUI's night mode. Now that performs some improvement on pictures in low light, but it's not as good as what we've seen on other devices in higher price ranges, such as on the OnePlus Nord or on the Google Pixel 4a. So don't be too expectant of low light photography on the POCO X3 NFC, but overall it's a really good camera and second to none in that sub £200 price range. The other highlight of the POCO X3 NFC is the selfie camera. It's the unsung hero of the POCO X3 NFC from what I've heard from other people using it. The POCO X3 NFC takes really decent selfie shots, and the 20 megapixel camera can also be recording video at 1080p. It's really quite a good feature, and for many vloggers on a budget, the POCO X3 NFC may be a really good option, especially because of that 3.5mm audio jack and maybe using external microphones, like the one we unboxed and have been using here on Tech Travel Geeks from Movo. Anyway, here at Tech Travel Geeks we can thoroughly recommend the POCO X3 NFC. I've been using this on and off as my main device for over 3 months, and while it isn't the best at getting the latest security patches from Xiaomi, this, for example, in mid-January 2021 is running on the October update, that's no different than what we've seen on lots of devices from Nokia and other brands. So, all in all, as I said, we're very impressed and very happy with the POCO X3 NFC. It's probably the reason for other devices hitting the market and failing miserably, because this was there offering so much value for money. I'm looking at you, OnePlus Nord N100. Anyway, to wrap up this review, as I've said, we're very happy with the device overall. If you like this review and you'd like to know more, feel free to leave us a comment in the section below. If you would like to see more of this type of content, as well as our drone flights, reviews of accessories and unboxings and how-to videos, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. But for now, thanks for watching and goodbye.